So both Tulum, Mexico and Koh Phangan Island in Thailand are places where people flock for a laid-back alternative lifestyle. They're popular with the health and wellness communities and also people who like to party. And I've recently spent a lot of time in both places, so this video is going to weigh the benefits and differences between the two places. So let's get into it. Hello, this is Eric and welcome to Rising Nomad. This is our channel and I'll be honest with you, I'm really biased on this one. I believe that Koh Phangan in Thailand is much better than Tulum, Mexico in almost all aspects. So if you're cost sensitive, you probably want to know which place is more expensive and where you can get a better deal for the lifestyle that you want. And I would definitely say that the answer is Koh Phangan is a lot more affordable if you're on a budget. You know, in Tulum, it's just outrageous how much a lot of the things cost, especially on the beach bars, beach clubs. You know, staying at a hotel that's $200, $300 a night, that's what it costs to stay on the beach of Tulum. Whereas in Koh Phangan, you can find so many options for such affordable prices. Like I know people are renting really nice houses near the beach for about 10,000 baht, which is about, what is that, like 350 or something US dollars a month. And well, it's just a lot cheaper. For example, in Tulum, I remember once I went to a meetup at the beach club and a bottle of San Pellegrino water was, what was it, $8 US, and I couldn't even imagine that here. And yeah, it's just so expensive. They'll take as much money as possible because they have a constant supply of people from North America who are used to paying those types of prices. Whereas once you get in Thailand, you know, the local economy is the dominant one. And while there are higher prices for foreigners and expat targeted places and places for tourists and stuff like that, if you want, you can still, you know, find deals. You can still go find pad thai for 60 baht, even in the tourist places. And that's a huge difference. So if you're on a budget, definitely Koh Phangan is a much better option. Let's talk about accessibility. And this is where Tulum actually will win out if you want to come for a shorter trip or you want to be in a time zone like the US Eastern time zone that Tulum is usually in. Basically, I think that if you want to stay close to home, if you want to be close to North America and, you know, you work with the US and your business and you have to be on their business hours, well, then Tulum definitely wins. But a lot of people would think that the relative inaccessibility of Koh Phangan is one of the benefits because it weeds out a lot of the people that you wouldn't want to come here, you know, because in Tulum, you can fly from any major North American city to Cancun airport within about 5 hours. And, you know, from all of that, Koh Phangan, where I am now, is on the other side of the planet. So I'm not going to categorize, like, for me, I much prefer the types of foreigners that you find in Koh Phangan. And it's probably a lot because of this factor. So definitely, I would say that the inaccessibility of Koh Phangan is a benefit, and for a lot of people, the accessibility of Tulum is a benefit. So there you go. So let's talk a bit about urbanism and transportation and getting around these two places. I'm a really big bicycle riding fan, and that's usually how I like to get around both places, Tulum and Koh Phangan. And most people in Koh Phangan drive a motorbike because the distances don't make it very walkable. But in Tulum, it's actually quite walkable. If you're in the town, close to the center, you can pretty much walk everywhere you would want to go. But I also really enjoyed having a bicycle to go, you know, further places like the beach, to go to Holistica and stuff like that. And it's interesting to note that taxis in both places are outrageously expensive. And you know, here they've got those pickup trucks that you sit on the back, and you know, they're pretty expensive. You have to negotiate. And in Tulum, it's just outrageous, you know, higher taxi prices than New York City. So I would say that in terms of the urbanism, Tulum is much more my vibe. Staying in a town where you can walk places, where, you know, there's a city center sort of place. Here you have Thongsala, but it's not the place that a lot of people really want to live. So you pretty much have to have a bike or a motorbike or a car here in Koh Phangan, whereas, I mean, I really enjoyed living in the center of Tulum because you could just get around really easily, really quickly. I mean, it's not like a beautiful European city, or it's not like as urban as Playa del Carmen, you know, with that lovely walking street there. But, you know, it's doable as a pedestrian, and that's one major benefit. But, I mean, look at these lovely surroundings that I'm in right now. This is what you get in Koh Phangan. You're closer to nature. So if you're looking to actually stay in a city like town environment, yeah, Tulum definitely wins in this one. But if you're looking to be closer to nature, I mean, look at this, folks. I mean, Tulum also has nature, but you're not living in the middle of it like you are always feeling that you are in Koh Phangan. All right, so the quality of food is definitely much better in Thailand and Koh Phangan, and I just feel that there's no contest here, because in Mexico, it's one of the countries where it's most in this global food system, this, you know, whatever sort of mass production, processed foods, you know, it just, the food there isn't very healthy, I have to say. The vegetables don't taste as real, neither do the fruits, you know, the milk doesn't taste as good. They use all sorts of horrible ingredients in their food as well. And here in Thailand, it's much more the real deal, fruits and vegetables. And the local cuisine is a lot healthier too, you know. The curries with rice and, you know, all of that stuff is so much better in Thailand, and the quality of that and a lot of other things. I'm not talking about just food, I'm talking about, you know, the quality of accommodation as well. But food is the big one for me, because you are what you eat, and I want to be healthy, and you know, the food here is also a lot more affordable if you eat locally. And there's no contest here, but yeah, Mexican food is tasty as a cuisine. Interesting, the hot sauce and everything like that, I dig it. But the quality of ingredients is just not there. And when I go to the supermarket in Mexico, it's just filled with all sorts of processed junk. Whereas here, if you go to a place like Macro, the supermarket, and other places, you know, you find the vegetables are actually stuff you want to put in your body. There's a wide range of them. And it's just really good here. So yeah, food is much better here in Koh Phangan. Safety and annoyances. Well, this is really going to be no surprise to anybody, but Koh Phangan is a lot safer and more peaceful than Tulum, you know. In October, when I arrived in Tulum, the day before I arrived, there was like a shooting at my favorite pizza place where some tourists died. Yeah, you know, I would sit out here on the patio and just eat pizza. And now it's been in the international news that, you know, shit happened here just a few days ago, and, you know, people died. I think you can still see some bullet holes here. I'm guessing those are bullet holes, I don't know, but some broken glass. And after that, the streets were very well militarized by the national police, and the vibe was just edgy, let's say. The police are friendly, but they're holding automatic weapons, you know. They say, good day to you, buenos dias, but you know that they're on high alert because there's lots of cartel violence, and unfortunately tourists are starting to get wrapped up in that. And as more tourism and money comes to Quintana Roo over there, it's just not a good vibe for safety. In terms of annoyances, yeah, I found that Mexico was a lot more scammy than Thailand. You have to count your change and point out when they try to give you the wrong amount of money back, a lot more. It almost never happens in Thailand. And stuff like theft of smartphones almost never happens in Thailand, but You know, I had situations in Tulum where there was some American guy standing outside of the place where I'm living, and there's some other people who live in the back, and he's knocking on the door trying to find someone because his phone had been stolen the night before, and the GPS location was showing it in this area. And he's asking me, and I'm just like, I don't know. Like, good luck with that, buddy. You know, you don't want to get involved in those things because you don't know what could happen. And the guy was just like, I'll give $100 to get my phone back. No questions asked. It's just like, not my thing. Whereas here in Koh Phangan, you often see that people are posting on Facebook groups, hey, I found this phone. Is it anybody's? I found this ID card, this wallet and stuff like that. A much better vibe. Much more honesty and peacefulness here in Thailand. I mean, there's annoying sort of double pricing for foreigners in both places, but I'd say that here people will be less likely to outright steal from you, and it's really important. In terms of annoyances, I found that Tulum is much worse as well because of noise and sort of general barking dogs, construction noise, people going down the street with megaphones trying to sell stuff. Yeah, it's a much more... I was living in the center of Tulum, a few blocks away from the main road there, and it was a noisy environment. There were barking dogs all the time, all around. It's obvious that the Mexican people did not take good care of their dogs, and so the dogs were angry and barking all the time. Here in Koh Phangan, it's not really a problem. Yeah, there's some stray dogs and they bark, and yeah, but it's not, I don't feel this tension, this sort of like overall, I mean, people in both places are very relaxed, but I would say that, yeah, here is much more authentically relaxed, whereas in Mexico, you know, there's a lot more tension under the surface, even though people generally are seeming relaxed. Yeah, so definitely Koh Phangan wins in this one. Okay, so the types of foreigners that you find in Koh Phangan versus Tulum. I much prefer the types of foreigners in Koh Phangan. I talked about this in the accessibility, being on the other side of the planet from North America and being, you know, quite far away from Europe. Koh Phangan, really, you have to be dedicated to get here. You really have to. Yeah, there's no airport here. There's an airport in Samui. You have to take the ferry, and you have to be willing to get out here. And people stay longer. They get more integrated into community here. Whereas Tulum, you get lots of people coming and going. Lots of people who just want to come and take some shots for their Instagram. That sort of Instagram influencer culture. And I find that here in Tulum, you have a lot more European people versus North Americans. And being from Europe, European people tend to be a lot more open-minded about other cultures, whereas in Tulum you have lots of North American people who aren't really there for the culture at all and aren't really willing to learn about different cultures at all and just want to be in a tropical version of their homes. And yeah, the behavior is just not my vibe in a lot of cases. There are a lot of conscious people like you know, who want to build, you know, alternative lifestyles, be nicer, get more in touch with themselves, but there's just so many more people in Tulum that don't get it, aren't there for the long haul, don't want to be a part of community, are just interested in flashing wealth, coming on short trips, not really even looking around at all, just looking for what the place can do for them. Whereas I feel in Koh Phangan, the types of foreigners who come here and the ones who stay here for long term, really awesome people in general. There are problems with some of the people, of course, all the time, everywhere, but in general, it's a much better crowd here. So if you're looking for community, you'll find it much more down to earth and much more authentic in terms of these like alternative, conscious, hippie vibes, and much more international. You know, here you have Russians, you have Germans, you have French people, whereas there's no dominant sort of ethnic group of foreigners here. Whereas in Tulum, there definitely is, and it's definitely North Americans. So yeah, I am from North America, but I decided to move to Europe a long time ago, and basically, you know, I'm the first generation of my family that was born out of Europe, and so I'm more for the European crowd. I'm more for that type of internationalism and more for flying to a place around the world on the other side of the planet, or, you know, 6 time zones away, rather than trying to make a place that's a few hours away into your little tropical paradise without checking your behaviors and what toxic behaviors you're bringing from the North American culture. Let's put it bluntly. Thai versus Mexican culture as a culture that you're visiting as a foreigner, expat, etc. Yeah, the vibe of both cultures is very relaxed compared to the stressful lives that a lot of us have lived in places like North America, Western Europe, so on and so forth. Both are very relaxed, but I would say that I much prefer Thai culture because I feel that there's a lot more for me to learn from the Thai culture, from, you know, their beliefs, their traditions and stuff like that. Whereas in Tulum in Mexico, it's this strange mix of the indigenous Mayan culture, which has been, you know, for hundreds of years systematically destroyed by European culture, and that sort of diluted European colonial culture, which doesn't have the richness of, you know, if you go to Spain, Southern Europe in general, all the old history and buildings and stuff. No, you don't really have that in the same way in Mexico. Yes, Mexico has lots of history, but the region of Quintana Roo, where Tulum is actually one of the regions with the least sort of history and has been built up the quickest over the last couple decades. And the vibe of the culture there is very much based on people moving there to work in the tourist industry in a lot of cases. And I can actually count on one hand the number of times I actually heard people speaking the Mayan language there. Whereas I feel with Thai and the Thai culture all around me here in Koh Phangan and in Thailand in general, there's a lot more to be learned for me as a person. And I much prefer it. It's much more peaceful. It's much more interesting and exotic. And I find the people a lot more just friendly and warm, even though in both places I would describe the people as friendly and warm, the locals. So yeah. So how about the environment and nature and those jungle vibes? And I will say in both places it's really nice that you can see the stars in the evening without light pollution that prevents that. And both places are really nice places for enjoying natural beauty. But I gotta say, Koh Phangan really takes the prize in this area. It's just, you don't have this there. You don't have this level of beautiful palm trees and stuff like that. You have all that stuff, but it just tends to be less lush. It tends to be more polluted, and it tends to be just under threat of being torn, you know, nature being trees taken down for the next housing development, because Tulum is exploding. And Koh Phangan, well, it's gonna look like this for a long time more. And I just love it here. You see a lot more wildlife. You hear a lot more tropical birds here in Koh Phangan compared to Tulum. When you walk down the street, it's just a completely different vibe here. This island is alive in a way that the area of Tulum in Mexico is not. The beaches here are a lot more varied. I would say the waves on the beach in Tulum are a lot bigger, so if that's a factor for you, you might want that. But you know, the sunsets here, wow. The overall, just like the views from the hills here, it kicks the ass of Tulum in every way. And listen to those birds. You just hear so much more nature, you see so much more nature, and you smell so much more nature here. And you can taste it more in the food. All right, now we're gonna talk about the major disadvantage for me personally, and for some people, you know, they might also find it important, is the arts and culture and entertainment and in general music scene. I'm a musician, and I really think that Tulum has an edge in terms of specifically music. You know, you can sit in a cafe and musicians will come and play for you. The local Latin American music is much, much better for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me on this, than Asian music. And there's just a culture of music there and entertainment, and you don't really have this sensibility here. You don't really have the types of venues. There was one wonderful venue that I really loved in Tulum called Bate, or Beatty's Mojito Bar, and you know, it was just an all-around great, really fun vibe with live music, local musicians playing, and I really enjoyed that place, and I don't really have an equivalent to that here. You don't really see music as a part of life here like you do in Tulum, and you know, I'd say that there's artistic aspects to both culture, like visual art and stuff like that, but there's much more in Tulum. It's much more of a hub for artists than Koh Phangan is, and there's a lot more in terms of festivals, I think, in Tulum, even though I haven't been to that many. But just in terms of like the bars you can go to, the sorts of vibes, dancing and stuff like that, here it's just crickets compared to a nice walkable city center of Tulum that has lots of options for different vibes that you can find in a, you know, Friday or Saturday night. So that's a huge thing for me, and I really want to work to have better parties in Koh Phangan, especially around world music and stuff like that comes so easily in a place like Mexico with their Latin American vibes. So yeah, big win for Tulum in terms of music especially, and arts and culture. So that's it, folks. I'm a huge fan of both places, and I really enjoyed my time in both places, but there was something just under the surface of what I experienced in Tulum that is a little bit edgy, and I feel that Koh Phangan is a place where I can make a long-term home, and Tulum will always be missing something for me. And just the vibe of this place is so much more magical, even though I would describe both places as magical. So yeah, you can watch videos that I'll put in the description from when I was in Tulum, Mexico, describing my experience when I was actually there. You can check that out. But overall, I think if you're looking for the authentic hippie vibes, conscious community, and alternative culture, yep, it's definitely going to be here in Koh Phangan versus Tulum, where you can go for more of, let's say, accessible vibe that, you know, a little bit more party, a lot more people on drugs, all the negatives that come with that, and all of the, you know, just sort of edginess of being in a place where there's a lot more violence, a lot more social issues that you don't seem to have here in Thailand. So yeah, I've made my decision, and this is going to be my place to build whatever community I'm going to build in person for the winters. You know, I live in Europe for part of the year, in Belgrade, Serbia, but for the winters, this is really where it's at for me. This is really a place where I really feel there are a lot of like-minded people, a general atmosphere of easygoing, good life, safety, and I don't know. You might decide differently which place is more for you. I encourage everybody to visit both places and make their own decision. But if you had to pick one, Koh Phangan is the real deal, and Tulum shows signs of over-commercialization. It shows signs of really the wrong type of people will take over the place, have already done so in a lot of cases, and squeezing out a lot of the people who, would probably prefer to be here in Thailand. That's it. This is Rising Nomad. We're building a global community online that will eventually involve meetups in places like Koh Phangan and maybe Tulum. And if you want to join our community, there's a Facebook group that you can join down below in the description. Click the link, and then we also have an inner circle sort of thing where people are much more connected in a community. So thanks for watching. If you like this channel, subscribe to this channel. If you don't. And we're building this thing, and we're trying to make lives for digital nomads as good as possible around the world. So, Rising Nomad, we'll catch you later. And wherever you are, I hope you have a wonderful time living your life in these beautiful places like Tulum and Koh Phangan. I'll catch you later.